Good morning, class. Today we're going to do lesson number 22, which is what can we do to help the climate? So last class we looked at what currently humans are doing, what technology is coming out, how are we trying to improve the environment or slow down climate change. And now we're going to talk about like individually what can each of us do to help. So um, I'm going to talk quite a bit about your carbon footprint today. So your carbon footprint is pretty much just every year how much CO2 gets put into the atmosphere by you directly or by you indirectly. So let's say, for example, you buy a tomato. So a tomato has to get transported from where it's picked to where you are. So there's a little bit of CO2 in that transportation. And as well as for a tomato, you pick it when it's not ripe. And then when you get to the store, close to the store, you ripen it by putting it in a ton of CO2 to ripen it up quickly. So there's some CO2 involved in ripening up the tomato. So that is not directly related to you, but it's indirectly related to you because you are buying that tomato. If you weren't going to buy that tomato, there wouldn't be that process. And that's kind of a hard thing to get your head around because, well, the tomato's in the store. It's already gone through this process. CO2 has already been released, but it's in the store. So how is it really my CO2 that I'm emitting? Well, if you think about the bigger picture, if nobody buys tomatoes, they wouldn't be there. So we'll talk about buying power in a bit, but sometimes it's hard to feel because you're just one person. But if everybody starts making steps towards being more eco-friendly, it will have a big impact on everything. It's just we need everybody to do it. So it starts with you, and it starts with each of us trying to do our part. So I made a list of different things and the CO2 emitted into the atmosphere per amount. And actually kind of like everyday things just so we can kind of get a sense of how our carbon footprint or how large our carbon footprint could be. So for every half a kilogram of cheese, so 500 grams of cheese, it's about 1.2 kilograms of CO2 emitted into the atmosphere, which is quite a bit. If you think well, I guess if you eat cheese, everybody's going to go through this maybe in a month individually. Um, over 12 months, you're looking at 14.4 kilograms of CO2 put in the atmosphere just from cheese alone. One loaf of bread is going to be half a kilo of CO2. One shirt over its lifetime, so the shirt being made, the shirt being washed, is about 4 kilograms of CO2. And then one pair of jeans, just to make the one pair of denim jeans, is actually 20 kilos. So jeans are terrible for the environment. Not only do they use a ton of water, they use dangerous dyes, but they also emit a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere. Um, for like 100 sheets of paper, so I've been going through a lot of paper, doing some of my lessons I've been doing on paper, uh, and that's half a kilogram of CO2 per 100 sheets of paper. 1 year's worth of charging your phone, that's going to be 11 kilograms. If you drive 1 kilometer, so right now it's like 20 kilometers for me to get to work if I drive. Um, so times this number by 20, and that's how much CO2 I'm emitting. So driving has a huge impact. And this is on average. So if you're driving an electric car, it's going to be lower. Driving a diesel car, it's going to be a bit higher. And then I also put 1 kilometer of busing. So if you're on the bus, on average, we like split the CO2 or the carbon footprint between the people on the bus on average, it's about 0.1 kilograms of CO2 per kilometer. So you're reducing it by 350%. No, wait, is that right? No, you're reducing it by 100% work again. Reducing it by like 40%. No, 60%. You have 40% left over. That's it. No, it'd be more like 35%. Ah, who knows? Um, so your carbon footprint is just the combined calculation of everything that you do and its amount of carbon dioxide emitted into the atmosphere, and that's just kind of added up. So on average, Canadians actually have a carbon footprint 4 times larger than the global average. And this is partly because in Canada and the States or North America, we do a lot of driving. So we drive a lot for work. We'll have massive commutes of people in like Europe just will never have. It's not part of the culture to have long commutes. We also have a culture of buying things when it breaks down. We're just gonna buy something new. And partly this is manufacturers producing things that are going to break down, so you buy another one. And part of it is that we um, are, I wouldn't say lazy, but it's convenient for us to just buy a new one instead of fixing it or replacing it. So we're in a definitely a market where we're buying things a lot. And the more you buy, the more CO2 that gets emitted. So I've broken down the carbon footprint into three sections: transportation, food, and purchases. And then we'll talk about what we can do to influence companies to be more eco-friendly. So with transportation, if you are driving alone, so currently yesterday and today I drove to work by myself, so I have that whole carbon footprint alone. It's all mine. If I'm busing, that carbon footprint is shared with people on the bus. So if you're busing, you're going to reduce your carbon footprint on average by about a quarter of a kilogram of CO2 per kilometer, which is significant. And if you carpool, you can split that carbon footprint with the people in the car. So a simulation of North America found that if everybody were to carpool, we could save 3.4 million metric tons of CO2 each year. That is 3.4 billion kilograms of CO2 each year if everybody carpooled that could. So some people can't carpool because maybe they're the only person in their neighborhood that's going somewhere. But if everybody carpooled, it'd be around this, and it could be up, it could be a bit more, it could be a bit less. But it's kind of an estimated amount. And this goes the same. If people that are able to bus, we're going to reduce our carbon footprint. And not only is this, but not only is this better for the environment, but it's also cheaper for us. Carpooling to save some money, busing saves some money. So good things on your road. It's beneficial for you, cost-wise, and from the environment. It's just inconvenient. So, and then you can consider what vehicle you buy next. So, I talked about last class. Electric cars produce about 30% less CO2 than gasoline cars, and that's currently right now. As we go further into the future, you can predict that this 30% value is going to increase. So electric cars will produce more or less and less CO2 compared to gasoline cars. But by far the best way to reduce your CO2 emissions based on transportation is to walk, bike, skateboard, rollerblade, scooter, run. I'm trying to think of other ways you can get around. I don't know, lots of ways. By not using an engine, you're pretty much eliminating your CO2 footprint due to transportation. Now, there's going to be some CO2 because you're breathing harder if you're exercising, and that's producing CO2. Or if you're biking, let's say there's going to be some CO2 needed to produce that bike, but it's very insignificant compared to the amount of CO2 you emit by driving. And I want to talk a bit about planes. It's kind of hard in the transportation section because I didn't want to make this such a long video, but air travel is terrible for the environment. It emits so much CO2. So by reducing air travel, so taking less vacations that are longer, so instead of going like 4 places a year for a week each, go 1 place for 4 weeks. So you're flying less will also reduce your CO2 emissions, reduce your carbon footprint. Okay, I'll get more into some other methods as well in a second here. So looking at